Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the virtual Workforce and Business Development Committee meeting. So, committee, the last item on the agenda, and we're going to be very sensitive because I know it's about 6 minutes to 1, was a referral from last night from council about our WIN program. And so what I sent to everyone, and I apologize, I sent it early this morning, you should have a copy of some potential partners, as well as the RFP that I received from Shreveport, Louisiana. I tried to email that around 10 or 10:30, just to kind of give us some foundation and some guidance. So, but I turn it over to staff for any conversation or any next step. Tracy?
So what I will say, and I had not had a chance to see your RFP example, Councilmember Mitchell, but I guess what I will say is very clearly we make a recommendation last night that there's a desire to go a different direction. That's totally fine. I think the direction that we need from council is, I go back to May, there was urgency about getting dollars out the door and assistance to the community. And so what I think I want to hear is there either a desire, we have another committee meeting, I think, scheduled for August 10th?
If there's not if we could do it in 15 days instead of 30 days, I think that'll be a win for the community. But I'm going to be quiet and get other committee members' take. Councilmember Ashmere?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree. We need to be transparent here in this process of selecting the partner. So I would also like to go with RFP approach.
Yeah.
I have questions around the candidate process. So can that process run in parallel? Because I understand that participants will be selected by the city. So can we at least start that process while the RFP is out?
Well, I don't know that's possible if we don't know who the provider is or what the program is or even how many candidates we're asking for. I mean, I think it's
cost and capacity.
Yeah, I mean, there would be, if we don't know who the partner is, I think there's too many unknowns to cost, to capacity, to schedule, all that kind of stuff. It's hard to find candidates in that. And one of the other things that, not just with the RFP, I think that it would be good to hear from everybody is what are we trying to achieve now? If we're going to go out for an RFP, and Councilmember Mitchell, and again, I apologize, I did not see your email from this morning.
So a couple of things, Councilman Ashman, I think what I heard from staff was we can't do it as a parallel track, but soon as we select the provider, then we can select the candidates. So I'm just going to speak first. I think we heard loud and clear for council members. We would like a 90 candidates program that was proposed to us earlier. But I want to make sure I hear from other committee members. And I would like to stay as close to the September, October timeframe as possible. When I talked to other people earlier this morning, the WIN is a model that throughout the nation people are using. That's why I was able to talk to someone in Shreveport, Louisiana. This is their RFP, so what I would like for staff to do, and committee members, let's read this, try to develop a timeline, see what's applicable to us. But the good thing, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's what I was trying to make sure we didn't do today.
Can I ask one more question? You mentioned the 90 candidates, the September, October timeframe. The job component of this was another important component that we had discussed. Are we just going to focus on the training, or is it critical that there be a job at the end of this as we look at these different providers?
So I just got to take, Councilmember Johnson, go right ahead.
Well, my understanding, Tracy, is we are implementing the same model that was proposed by TAR's organization. This is a little awkward, but when Mr. Picari presented that to the city manager, that was the city council presenting the model that the city wishes to implement. The model that we're looking at, I would hope it would be seamless to the participants. If there were already 90 participants selected, I think it's fair that they have first opportunity to participate. So we are looking at that exact same model. It's my understanding. I showed my little pie graph last night. There's an employer piece, and then there is the city paying the participants to attend. That's the model that the RFP will solicit. So we know the program, and we may have a head start on participants. So yes, there will be a job on it. The RFP would be for a provider to be the administrator of this same model that was originally proposed to the city manager in May.
Thank you, Councilman Johnson. So,
Okay, I can't guarantee that we can replicate the same model and that the jobs are there at the end of it. So there's multiple steps to the process, I guess, what we were looking at. And so that was part of the partnership that we discussed with the CELC.
Okay.
Is that they were working on the jobs component of it. I think that the jobs piece of it, my understanding from the conversations with the CELC was that they had identified when, as a workforce training provider, that they were comfortable with, which then allowed the jobs to follow. I mean, Emily, I'm looking at you if I misspoke on something. Okay.
And so, let me make sure then we're clear. So we create the same win model. If we create the same win model that the CLC want, do you think there'll be an issue? Okay,
I don't know, I can't speak for the employers.
okay.
Yeah, the other piece, just, I'm sorry not to interrupt you, but the other piece that's really important is our money was a piece of this. And so if we're going to try to create the win model, are we saying that we want to now put whatever the total cost was, the 6.5 million towards this?
Yeah.
No, I know, but hold on, but that was with the, if we don't now have the private investment, or do we have to go raise the private investment? How do we, I mean, there's a balancing act to that. So we either need to say that we want to run a $6.5 million program and that we're going to put that money towards it, or we are only putting 1.5 million to a program and see how it's spread out.
And so I have three people in the hopper, then I'll make a comment. Mayor Pro Tem, then Councilmember Watlington, then Councilmember Ajmer. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, well, Tracy, you started discussing, I guess, what concerns me, and I tried to spend a lot of time unpacking this deal, regardless of the concerns we all had about a conflict of interest. And I spoke to employers, part of the CELC, who were making commitments to hire people. And while they're not making a contractual agreement to hire those people, they're making a commitment because of the structure of the training program. So, you know, Ms. Johnson, the pie chart, the difference with this is that 4 or 5 million goes away now. It starts from scratch. We can say that we would commit the training portion of it, the 1.5, but the risk now of starting over with RFPs is you're also starting, it seems to me, and confirm that, Tracy, if I'm wrong about it, but there's no obligation for those employers now to say that they will continue to try to commit to those jobs. And that's what that 4 or 5 million was. It was misleading because it was not, here's $4 or $5 million. It was saying, we will commit to 80 or 90 jobs that have an annualized salary, and that's what that $4 or $5 million really means. So I think that's a really important part of this, is that CARES Act money may be paying for training, but there's no back-end investment that's now a commitment. Is that not correct? I mean, that's the key with the RFP, is how quickly are you going to put together sponsors for those jobs who will commit to a certain salary for a certain number of people.
So that's correct. She's correct.
Mayor Pro Tem, staff's agreeing with you. Councilmember Watlington?
Just so we recognize that.
Outside looking in, I think that it would stand to reason that if these particular sponsors have jobs and they have open, and they are willing to hire people with a certain skill set, that we can simply go talk to the people on the CEO and verify that they still have jobs and they still have a need. That I recognize that that requires a step, but I don't think that we're starting from scratch. I think we still have the opportunity. It just sounds like we need to have a couple conversations.
Right.
I also think that part of that conversation can simply be asking, what are the skill sets that you're looking for? And we can roll that into the RFP, and then recognizing that the companies or the organizations we expect to respond already have a skill set in this area, and considering the list that Mr. Chair sent out, sounds like they're already operating in 9 or 10 cities, options. So this is not going to be brand new. And I just have to believe, particularly some of the ones that are operating here in our city already have these partnerships. So I just don't want us to overstate the work that needs to be done to get this accomplished. I just optimistically, maybe overly optimistic, but I don't see the companies that were agreeable to this yesterday all of a sudden not being agreeable if we can meet the same standards. And it sounds like there are certainly industry standards that already exist.
Mr. Chair, can I chime in and save everyone a little time? Because I've gotten updates from all the companies since our meeting last night.
Well, let me go to Ms. Ashmere, and then I come to Councilmember Carter. Ms. Ashmere? Well, I'm sorry, Ms. Watlington, did you, Emily?
Sure. A question I would have for council too is the WIN program is focused on training and coding and development, so software engineers, software developers, and Councilmember Carter.
Can't hear.
Sorry, my apologies. So the WIN program is focused on training individuals in software development and coding. There are other aspects of technology such as data analytics, cybersecurity, and so I would ask the council, are we trying to focus still on the software development, technical skills and abilities for our residents, or are you open to considering proposals from training providers that may offer a variety of technology training topics that could serve a different variety of individuals, but with the understanding that those jobs may not align with the original job commitments we had because it was a more narrowly tailored skill set out of the WIN program?
I think casting a wide net's a great idea.
So that, Councilmember Ashmere?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Councilmember Watlington. We are not starting from scratch here. There are employers that have already made commitment or had expressed an interest in possible partnership because there are jobs out there and there are skill sets that are needed that we can actually fill that gap. So with that being said, I also agree with Emily. If there are RFP proposals that include additional skill set that wasn't part of our original proposal, we should consider that with the guaranteed job placement.
Councilmember Carter?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to chime in because I've had a lot of conversations, as you can imagine, in the last 12 hours. I think it's important to remember, just to save time, because we're going to be asking staff to do an awful lot to pull this rabbit out of the hat, but I'm committed to figuring out another option with us all. It's important to remember that the 90 jobs that we brought together, while we partnered with the CELC to do that, it wasn't the FinTech hub that convinced them that, hey, give us the jobs and we'll be your vendor. Those companies are the FinTech hub, right? It's a joint nonprofit venture of them all. So they have all come together and helped build this program with me over the last 3 years. And that's what gave them the comfort to be able to be involved and sign up for, in the first year, 30 jobs. Now we have 50 jobs and they were going to move to 90. So just so we save time, the private sector, several of the major players have gotten together this morning And we're going to move forward with the WIN program for 90 people, not using any public sector dollars. We're just going to find, and we've gotten some initial indications that there are other private sector folks that will step up and pay the salary so we don't have to let these 90 folks suffer. However, I believe that if a great proposition, a perfect proposition of here's how we'll train, here's how we'll spend and raise money for stipends, for educational program, for whatever it is, can be brought together, groups like the CELC and myself as well, I'll help find other placements. But the challenge is going to be the placements, because if we only have time for a 1 or 2 month program that we don't know the provider yet, the big challenge is going to be the kind of jobs and placements those 90 are at $55,000 a year starting salary. That isn't, I mean, it's an intensive 5 to 6 month process for this side. So I think we probably need to reevaluate. And when we say WIN is a standard procedure and a best practice in the industry, it's actually not. It's one of a kind. It's the only one like it because we built it because it didn't exist 3 years ago. So there's no WIN to be recreated. WIN is something that is very custom for this group of institutions that came together to do it. So I'm with you all 100% in finding another solution to help these folks. But the bottom line is those jobs are the 90 jobs are still going to now, it looks like, move forward just with private sector funding. We just are now going to have to figure out, as we kind of go back to the drawing board exactly what we can achieve in an RFP. And the difference is if we RFP it, we're looking for a vendor. And there's a lot of good vendors that do this, but you pay a vendor to achieve a certain outcome. So I think we need to, if we're going the RFP route, come up with a new vision of here's what we want to pay someone to do. And that's just going to be the training. Then we have to go do the hard work of finding the job commitments. I hope that helps us and saves some time.
Councilmember Johnson?
I wanted to clarify the funding model because Councilmember Islett asked a question, answered. So the $5 million, well, let me ask this. How was the administration and the salaries and the curriculum going to be paid for in the WIN model? That was donations from the private sector. Isn't that correct?
Emily, you got to turn on your mic.
The only expense for the federal money was for the participant's salary. The program administrative costs, the curriculum costs, the marketing costs were all covered by the private sector fundraising and commitments that WIN brought to the table.
Okay. So then the cost is part of a collaborative approach. My understanding, Ms. Islett, from the pie chart, there's a private sector and there's the public sector. It's a marriage. So that's the RFP that we're looking for, that type of collaboration.
I would recommend, council member, to consider increasing the budget for the program or potentially decreasing the number of participants, given that we will now need to cover administrative costs and training costs for this program.
How do you feel we'll need to cover the administrative costs?
Because we don't have now that private sector investment. If, Councilmember Johnson, what you're suggesting is that we do an RFP, we find a provider, but we also go find the private sector investment. Just everybody be clear, we're adding in another layer or another step, I should say, in there. And again, that's another piece that takes time.
No, what we're saying in an RFP is provider, bring employers to the table. Bring this is a model. And it's not exclusive to WIN. It's not proprietary. It may have been before the councilman presented it to the city manager. But once it was presented to the city manager, this is a city project. And so we're saying, look, my pie chart again, bring this model to the table that includes employers and will cover the participants. That's the model.
So I want to so just to be clear on your ask, you're asking for us to select a training provider with also the caveat that they bring private partners who will commit jobs as well as funding to cover some of the program costs.
Yes, isn't that all of, that's all of my understanding.
No, I just wanted to, and I've been listening to this. I mean, it's some good comments, but just from a private sector perspective, finding a group that's going to be able to bring that administrative skills needed and the training skills needed to train these people in, what do we have, 5 months? To get the program put together, RFP'd out and back, it's going to be a tough lift. I mean, we've got to keep in mind that you've got not a whole lot of time and a lot of work. And I just want to make sure that as council, everybody puts that together first. And I would assume that the reason the CDLC is doing it is because they believe in the training and the individuals that are coming out on the back end. So they're committed to hiring them. So to find that partner, it's going to be interesting. I wish everybody luck, and it's going to be a very tough lift, I think.
Vinay, as always, appreciate your wisdom. So the last item I have is the next meeting with, I'm sorry, did I miss someone?
I'm sorry, I raised my hand late. This is Watlington.
I'm sorry, Ms. Wallington, go right ahead.
I just wanted to maybe throw out something that might put a wrench in the whole thing, but it sounded like what Councilmember Bakari said is that program in particular was going to go on without public investment. And so my question then becomes, does that change I'll just say it plain. If they're going to do it anyway without public investment, then do we need to duplicate it, or would we be better served to put that public investment somewhere else? And I'll leave it there, just for your thoughts.
Excellent point, and staff can bring that back on August 10th and get everybody's feedback.
Mr. Chair, can I chime in on that?
Ms. Wallington, when you finish, and then I can go Councilmember Bakari.
I was finished, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Bakari?
Thank you. I think that's not a bad point, because here's what I'm scared of. And listen, for everything we went through last night, I promise you all, I am back at the table, back at the drawing board to help the people in need, to help us all craft something new. If we send staff away trying to duplicate what literally my group has been doing for 3 years now, and we spent 3 months getting to this point, and we asked them to do it in like a week and figure it all out from scratch, the exact same, we're sending them on a fool's errand here. I think Victoria's right. The private sector thing is looking very promising that it'll move forward. Let's do something else in workforce that is achievable. I think it's going to have to be lower on the spectrum of kind of advanced. Either it can be in technology, maybe it doesn't have to be, but I think we've got to think about something that is what can be trained in 1 or 2 months, and where can maybe people earn $25,000 or $30,000 or $35,000 a year, and we have to look at the job data. If we set staff up with that problem statement and bring us back something like that, rather than trying to do what was already done just to prove that, see, anyone can do it, I really, truly, in my heart, believe we're setting them up for failure, and we'll end up doing nothing and wasting their time in the process. So I just plead with all of you, let's ask them to give us their opinion of what can be done, right-sized to now where we are on the calendar and in the crisis.
So on August 10th, staff be glad to bring back different options, what you all would like for us to consider, whether it's different or something the same. We welcome